5 objects, 5 mysteries, each one a case that the world has been trying to crack for decades. A geared bronze computer built before clocks existed. Lines carved into a desert so large you can only see them from the sky. A manuscript written in a language no one alive can read. Stone blocks cut to tolerances that would challenge a modern machine. And a stone map of a world that shouldn't have existed when it was made. In 2026, with AI analysis, ground-penetrating radar, and electron microscopes, these 5 cases are still open. And today, we open the files. Before we open case number 5, all 5 have 2 kinds of evidence, and I'm going to be clear about which is which throughout. Documented fact, physical evidence, peer-reviewed analysis, scientific consensus. This is what we can prove. Open theory, alternative interpretations, speculative ideas, the questions the evidence raises but doesn't answer. 5 cases. Let's go. Oslo, Bashkortostan, Russia. Age disputed, 120 million years, or 3000 BCE. Case number 5, and I'm starting here because most of you have never heard of it until now. In 1999, a professor at Bashkir State University named Alexander Chuvirov discovered a stone slab weighing over a ton. It had been used as a doorstep. For centuries, nobody knew what it was. When he really examined it, what he found stopped him cold. Documented fact. The slab is a 3-dimensional relief map. It shows rivers, mountains, and what appear to be canals. With extraordinary precision, the region depicted matches the western Ural Mountains area of Russia. The carving technique uses dolomite, which is extremely hard to work with. Russian geologists confirmed it is not a natural formation. It was made deliberately. Here is where the case gets complicated. Documented fact. The slab contains what appear to be hieroglyphic symbols that have not been matched to any known writing system. Some researchers note what look like ancient Chinese or Sanskrit characters. None have been conclusively identified. And then there's the dating. This is where the investigation splits. Open theory. Professor Chuvirov claimed the slab is approximately 120 million years old, based on the shells of extinct creatures found in the stone. If true, no human hand made it. Something else did. Mainstream view. Most geologists place it between 3,000 and 6,000 years old, still remarkably ancient, and attribute it to an unknown but human civilization with sophisticated cartographic knowledge. The 120 million year claim is widely disputed. Whether it's 3,000 years old or 120 million, the question remains the same. Who made a 3-dimensional topographical map of a specific region of Russia, and why? What civilization had that knowledge, and why have we barely heard of it? Case status: partially documented, largely uninvestigated. The slab is real. The precision is real. The origin is genuinely unknown. Nazca Desert, Peru, approximately 500 BCE to 500 CE. Case number 4, and unlike the last one, everyone has heard of these, which means everyone thinks they know the answer. The Nazca lines cover an area of roughly 50 square kilometers of desert in southern Peru. There are over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 animal and plant designs. Some lines run perfectly straight for miles across terrain that rises and falls. Documented fact. The lines were made by removing the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles from the surface to reveal the yellowish ground beneath. No special tools required. The how of their creation is understood. A team of people with sticks and rope could technically do this. So mainstream archaeology is not wrong about the technique. But technique is not the mystery. The mystery is this. You cannot see these from the ground. Some figures are over 300 meters across. The spider, the condor, the famous astronaut figure. From ground level, they look like nothing. From the air, they are unmistakable. Documented fact: the Nazca people had no known aviation technology. They built these images that can only be fully appreciated from hundreds of feet in the air, and apparently never saw them complete. Mainstream archaeology says they were ritual pathways, sacred lines walked during ceremonies, religious offerings to gods in the sky, and that is a legitimate theory. Open theory: they were signals, markers, runways, or landing indicators for something or someone looking down. Every ancient culture that left massive ground markings also described beings that came from above. That is not proof, but it is a pattern worth noting. And here is the thread I want you to pull. If you've followed Season 1 of this series, the Divine Council, the Elohim, the beings described in ancient texts as coming from the sky, then Nazca is not a random mystery. It is a data point in a much larger investigation. Case status: creation method documented, purpose genuinely unknown. The question is not how, it's who were they made for. Tiwanaku, Bolivia. Approximately 500 to 1000 CE, or much older. Case number 3. And this one I want you to look at carefully, because the physical evidence here is the hardest to explain away. Documented fact: Puma Punku is a section of the larger Tiwanaku site in Bolivia, at an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters. The blocks used in construction include andesite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, and sandstone. The largest blocks weigh over 100 tons. The nearest quarry is 10 kilometers away. The civilization that built it had no known writing system and no wheel. Now here is what I need you to understand about these blocks. Documented fact: 2025 and 2026 photogrammetry and 3D scanning of Puma Punku blocks confirms cuts accurate to fractions of a millimeter, perfect right angles, interlocking grooves that fit together like machine-made components, identical H-shaped blocks that would need to have been mass-produced to a precise template, with stone and copper tools, at 4,000 meters altitude, without the wheel, without a written language to record the engineering. Mainstream view: achieved through patient skilled labor, harder abrasive stones, careful measurement techniques, and possibly geopolymer, artificial stone casting, which would explain the uniformity. Recent analyses emphasize Andean engineering capability rather than impossible technology. Open theory: the precision exceeds what patient labor with stone tools can explain. Some researchers point to acoustic levitation, lost machining technology, or construction by a civilization predating the Tiwanaku people by thousands of years, one whose identity is completely unknown. Note: the geopolymer theory is the most credible mainstream explanation. But here is the problem. If they were casting artificial stone to templates, that itself implies a level of chemical and engineering knowledge that should have left other traces in the archaeological record. It hasn't. Case status: the precision is documented and confirmed by modern scanning. The method remains genuinely contested. The civilization that built it remains poorly understood. Europe. Carbon dated approximately 1404 to 1438 CE. Case number 2. The most studied undeciphered document in human history. And in 2026, still no one can read it. Documented fact: the Voynich manuscript is a handwritten illustrated codex, carbon dated to approximately 1404 to 1438 CE. It contains 240 pages of unknown script, illustrated with plants that don't match known species, astronomical diagrams, zodiac symbols, and figures of women in what appear to be pools or baths. The script shows statistical patterns consistent with natural language. It is not random. It has not been deciphered. Serious researchers have thrown everything at this. World War II codebreakers, NSA analysts, AI language models, statistical linguists, all of them stopped. Documented fact. 2025 to 2026 research, including the Naive cipher study, suggests the manuscript could result from a medieval substitution cipher applied to Latin or Italian, reproducing many of its odd statistical properties. This makes a sophisticated coded document more plausible than pure nonsense. But it is not a solution. The content remains unknown. So what is it? Here is where the theories diverge dramatically. Theory A: an encrypted herbal or medical text. The plant illustrations support this. Even if the plants don't match known species, they may be stylized or from a lost tradition of botanical knowledge. Theory B: an alchemical manual from a secret society, deliberately encoded to protect knowledge from the church. The astronomical sections and female figures support ritual or initiatory content. Theory C: a sophisticated hoax designed to be sold to wealthy collectors of curiosities in medieval Europe. This would explain the natural language statistics. A clever forger would know enough to make it look real. A hoaxer good enough to fool modern AI statistical analysis would need to be one of the most sophisticated linguists of the medieval period. That level of skill applied to fraud, when you could apply it to genuine scholarship, doesn't quite add up. Someone wrote this, someone could read it, and whatever it says, someone decided it needed to be hidden. Case status: genuine artifact confirmed, undeciphered as of 2026. Content, author, and purpose remain unknown. Greek shipwreck, Aegean Sea, approximately 150 to 100 BCE. Case number 1. And I am going to say something that sounds impossible, and then prove it. 2,000 years ago, someone built a computer. Documented fact. The Antikythera mechanism was recovered from a Roman-era shipwreck in 1901. For decades, it was dismissed as a lump of corroded bronze. X-ray analysis in the 1970s revealed at least 30 interlocking bronze gears of extraordinary precision. 2024 to 2026 studies using advanced CT scanning have now identified the full complexity of the device. It tracked the movement of the sun, moon, and 5 known planets. It predicted solar and lunar eclipses. It tracked the 4-year Olympic cycle. It displayed the Metonic cycle, a 19-year astronomical pattern, and the Saros cycle used for eclipse prediction. Let me be precise about what this means. This device, built around 150 BCE, performed calculations that Europe would not rediscover for over 1,400 years. The next comparable mechanical device in the historical record appears in 14th century CE astronomical clocks. That is not a gap in technology. That is an erasure. Documented fact. 2024 to 2026 gear simulations have identified potential limitations. Triangular gear teeth that may have caused jamming after months of use, and questions about whether it modeled solar motion or functioned as a lunisolar calculator. It was impressive but not flawless. It was real, functional, and singular. Mainstream view. A remarkable but singular Hellenistic invention. Greek mathematics and mechanics were sophisticated enough to produce it. No evidence of widespread similar devices suggests it was a unique achievement rather than part of a broader technological tradition. Open theory. It was not singular. It was the survivor. One device from what may have been a broader tradition of Greek or pre-Greek mechanical knowledge that was lost, destroyed, suppressed, or simply forgotten. In the collapse of the ancient world, we found one because it was on a ship that sank. How many others existed and didn't survive? The mainstream view is technically accurate. The Hellenistic Greeks were brilliant enough to build this. But singular achievements don't happen in a vacuum. Someone taught someone. Someone experimented before this. The tradition that produced the Antikythera mechanism existed. And then it didn't. That disappearance is the real mystery. Case status. Device confirmed real and fully documented. Capability confirmed by modern analysis. The tradition that produced it vanished without trace. 5 cases. 5 objects that refuse to fit neatly into the timeline we've been taught. A stone map of a region that shouldn't have been mapped. Lines in a desert visible only from the sky. Stone blocks cut to tolerances that challenge modern machinery. A manuscript that has defeated every codebreaker alive. And a mechanical computer that was 1,400 years ahead of its time. Ancient people were not primitive. The evidence in these 5 cases alone proves that. What they knew, and what was lost, is a question that mainstream archaeology has barely begun to answer. The more interesting question is not what these artifacts are. It's what they suggest about everything we haven't found yet. If today's investigation raised questions for you, I want you to know that every one of these artifacts connects to a much deeper pattern. Ancient texts, suppressed knowledge, beings described in Scripture who may have walked among us. That's the investigations we've been running in Season 1 of Unburied Remnants. The Nephilim, the Divine Council, the gods of Egypt, the missing books of the Bible, the flood that actually happened. If today felt like only the surface, Season 1 is where we go deep. Subscribe. Hit the bell. We're just getting started.